Hello, I am David Cade, the CEO of the American Health Law Association. Each year, the Board of Directors approves a slate of esteemed individuals selected by the Fellows Coordinating Council as AHLA Fellows. These longtime members have shown a commitment to the association through their participation as speakers, authors, mentors, and leaders. They are regarded as one of the top health law professionals in the legal community, and all have been actively practicing in AHLA and the health law profession for 15 or more years. While the bios for these new fellows are posted on AHLA's website, it is just a snapshot of their many accomplishments. I want to give you the chance to hear from them personally and learn more about why they deserve the Fellows honor. The 2023 Fellows class includes 8 exceptional individuals. Today, I have the distinct honor to be speaking with Alan Bloom. Alan, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Great, great, great. I want to start with just how does it feel to be an AHLA Fellow?
It's wonderful. I've been involved with AHLA since the early 1970s. And so it's kind of fun to see that you still know I'm alive out here in California. And there are people who still remember me. Exciting, because I did spend a lot of time and a lot of my heart went to AHLA over the years.
Yes, we remember you, and you've contributed a lot to the community, starting back, as you said, back in the 70s with NHLA. So you have been a trailblazer. So let me take you back a little bit so that the listening audience can learn a little bit more of your journey. Why did you go to law school, and why did you select health law as a career area?
Well, what happened is when I graduated from college, I didn't know where I was going to go, and my parents told me it was a field called public health. So I applied, and I went to the University of Michigan School of Public Health and got a master's of public health. And I always wanted to go into the federal government and see what that was like. And so I got into the federal government in 1970 in a lowly position as a public health analyst. And I was in the government for a while. It was interesting, but I said, you know, I really would like something more for my career and for my intellect. And I was single at the time, and I had a lot of time on my hands, and the government wasn't too demanding of my time. And Washington, D.C. had a whole bunch of night law schools that were in those days fairly inexpensive. And in those days, if you were in government, a lot of people in government went to night law school. So I got into and went to the American University School of Law. And since I was already had a job as a public health analyst in the health services and mental health administration, health law was naturally an area that I was interested in, although in those days, in the early 70s, there were really almost no health law courses. You just took regular courses. So I kind of got my health information from my job and my legal information from going to law school.
That is great. That is great. You were here at the beginning of the thing called health law.
Right there.
And as you have progressed throughout your career, how has AHLA helped you remain connected with your health law colleagues?
Well, obviously, I met a lot of people in health law at the AHLA meetings and being involved in the board and being involved in as an officer. And AHLA gave me the chance to give a lot of speeches and write papers and get to know people through those kinds of things. And then I can remember a number of times I would be on an AHLA program and people would call me on the side and say, here's some information for you. For example, I was on the AHLA annual meeting program in 2017, and I was scheduled to give a speech on, I forget, some area involving risk adjustment or something. And one of the whistleblowers from a big case called me up just before the speech and said, I want to tell you about my journey. And we had about a 2-hour conversation about why she was a whistleblower and what risk adjustment issues were that she uncovered. And it's those kinds of interactions that really made AHLA a very exciting and valuable experience, and gave me a chance to talk to people who were really in the middle of it, even more than I was.
That's great. That's great. And to this day, you still remain connected with your colleagues in the association. And so,
yeah. And by the way, sometimes during this conversation, I do want to add something about why AHLA is very valuable for retirees to have. So we can do that at the end if you like.
well, why don't you go ahead and tell us?
Okay, well, if you're retired, it really came to focus the other day when a friend of mine called me up, and he had retired, and he said, by the way, I've retired, and I enrolled in the AHLA arbitration mediation program, and I've become an arbitrator, and this has given me a second career. And it reminded me of the fact that I do some consulting on the side for some organizations, and that I use the AHLA resources to help update me on what's going on so that I can do my consulting job. And in addition, I found that having been in the field so long, I really appreciate the health law information, the daily stuff that comes in, just to keep me knowledgeable. And finally, it's very entertaining. I walk every day in the afternoon. I take a walk of at least 10,000 steps. I put on my little iPhone and go to the podcasts and listen to some of the AHLA podcasts as I walk along. Lighter side of health law is, of course, a great thing, but the whole Dobbs podcasts have been fabulous for me, just for intellectual stimulation as well. So there's just a lot of things that if you've been in health law and you're no longer working in the field, being an AHLA, which by the way gives a reduced rate to retirees, kind of keeps you alive and keeps you in the mix and gives you opportunities. I haven't done any more speaking or writing recently, but if I wanted to do that, I could still do that through AHLA. So for retirees, I found it to be even a greater boon than even when I was not retired and working.
Well, I'm going to take this valuable message and make sure that I share it with the larger fellows community as folks are considering retirement, and some have already retired, as you know, just to help them understand that we're still here to help them stay connected. I appreciate you segueing into that uplifting message. So if a new AHLA member asked you how to get involved in the association, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that AHLA is unlike any other professional organization, in that most other professional organizations are run by cliques, and those cliques who decide who the officers are, and they decide who's going to give the speeches. AHLA is totally different. AHLA reaches out to people. So if you want to get into AHLA, you have the opportunity to, they're always looking for volunteers to write papers. They're always looking for volunteers to give speeches. They're always looking for volunteers to be the leadership. And you can contact the specialty program folks who are running the various member areas. And sometimes you can do collaborations with them and write papers with them, and it helps you to network. It's a terrific experience, but the emphasis on volunteers. You open up the magazine, and they have these offers for volunteers to do various things. Get involved in those kinds of volunteer activities, and you'll be able to network, you'll be able to build your resume, and you'll be just much more knowledgeable of what's going on.
Very good advice. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very good advice. And now, after having such a good an illustrious career, as you think about it, if you could give your younger self back in the days, back in the 70s, one piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a tough question for this reason. Right now, I'm exactly where I want to be in life. I'm very, very happy. And that's based on thousands of decisions I've made over my life. And some of the stupidest, most reckless decisions I've made led in crazy ways to new opportunities. So I would probably say to myself, be a little bit more careful, be a little bit less reckless, but also be aware that sometimes things that you did on impulse, which at the time didn't seem so good, actually turned out to give you new opportunities.
Yes, and sometimes you have to take chances, and it sounds like you took chances.
Oh yeah, a lot of chances.
That leads me to ask this next question, and that is, when you think about the important traits necessary to be an effective health lawyer, what would they be?
Well, there's all kinds of health lawyers. And so I can't really tell you in detail what it is to be inside a firm running a massive piece of litigation for several years and getting into the minutia and the depths. I can tell you from speaking as somebody who is generally in health law, as a general counsel, and working my entire career in either government or working within organizations, that the key tactic is basically understanding healthcare, and that you have to not just watch the law, but watch the trends that are going on in healthcare, and watching kind of what's going on in litigation, what's going on in legislation, kind of watching the larger trends. Because when you're in an organization, you often think that the organization is going to be deciding its own fate. But the truth is that a lot of what happens to an organization is dependent on what happens in the legislative chambers or what happens in the business community as a whole.
Oh, yes. That ties to your earlier comment of staying connected, learning and growing, understanding the law. As you said, even to this day, you're staying connected, listening to podcasts, reading the publications. You haven't stopped.
Yeah, that's why I like that daily health law, that daily bulletin that comes out from AHLA, which I read, which concentrates more on kind of what's going on legislatively and what's going on in the healthcare world, versus just looking at what the cases are or looking at what the new laws are.
Right. Oh, it's a good message. So I want to end with this question, and it gives you a chance to tell me what you used to do and what you do now. One of the things that we pay a lot more attention to these days, I know, than we probably did back then, was how we have balance in our lives. Not just the worker bees or the workaholics, but how do we have balance? So tell the listening audience, did you have balance during the heyday of your practice? Are you balanced now? What did you do for fun?
Well, back, of course, when I was single, I was in the government at the time, and I had the opportunity to decide how the government was going to evaluate organizations. So I convinced the government to allow me to do a lot of site visits. And so in those days, I traveled all over the United States doing site visits. But when I did site visits, I met people. I actually did some dating when I was out there across the country. I made a lot of friends. I stayed at people's homes. I really got to travel all over the United States and meet a lot of people and do things. Then as I settled down and got married with a wonderful woman who was just perfect for me, we then had a child, and so we had a family life, and we went to amusement parks, and then as my daughter got older and got her own life, we used to go out bowling a lot. The two of us would go to theater a lot. There's a lot of great theater in Los Angeles. And then as we got a little older, we've now kind of settled down to we every day get up and we sleep late. we go out and we get 4 newspapers at the Barnes and Nobles and come home, and my lovely wife does her crossword puzzles and I read the news. And then in the evening we do some reading, and we watch streaming service and really have a quieter life like that. But that's kind of given me a feeling I've always had a rich, full life. But if you really have to have a family, you really have to give the time to the family. I hear people, if they're spending 7 days a week, 14 hours a day working, they're missing life.
That's a very good message. That's a very good message. And it sounds like you are, in fact, living a very full life. That's wonderful to hear. And so, Alan, again, I congratulate you again for spending time with us today. More than anything, I congratulate you on being selected as an AHLA Fellow. An honor very, very well deserved, my friend. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. It's been a pleasure.